Hello, non-binaries, ladies and gentlemen, and anything else in between. I have a very special guest today, Jen Ives, who I'm talking across the Atlantic, which I guess makes us transatlantic women. So I know, horrible joke. Horrible joke. Some of you may be familiar with her, especially if you're in the UK. She's a comedian, and I'll also link you to her channel below. And I really think you should give her a watch because I'm sorry. She's just funny. She knows how to. Oh, not again. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened there.
That's okay. No worries. I mean, you were saying very nice things about me, I believe. I'm happy to hear them again. You can, all right. We've all got internet issues. Yeah, you know, there's something we can all bond on.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, hello, non-binaries, ladies and gentlemen, anything in between. I have with me a very special guest all across the Atlantic, which probably makes us transatlantic women. She's heard that joke 3 times already, thanks to this internet disconnection. She's a comedian. She's also trans, as I probably mentioned earlier before, and I will link you to her channel down below. Some of you may already be familiar with her in the UK. She's done skits for Channel 4 and any other channels over there?
I've done some writing for like Dave and Channel 4 and some BBC stuff.
Yep. And she's funnier than Dave Chappelle. So I want you to bear that in mind.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
you're gonna have a lot of people coming for me if you say that. You know, yeah. I mean, the consensus is that I'm not. That's what people say.
Well, fuck them. That's what I say.
Yeah, but thank you. That's very flattering.
Yeah. So yeah, how long have you been in the comic industry? Well, what inspired you?
Well, I haven't been in it as long as Dave Chappelle has. I've been doing it for like, I don't know, I lose track. Like it must be like 6 to 7 years now. Not a massive amount of time, you know, in the scheme of things. There are people that are like, you know, like old time comics that are like, if you haven't been in it 10 years, you don't even know you're born, kind of thing. But it's interesting that you mentioned Dave Chappelle, sorry, because like I know that Dave Chappelle is a point of contention around trans people at the moment, and understandably so. I haven't watched his last couple of specials. I feel like I don't need to, because I've seen the other 3 that were like all about trans people. The only thing I'll say about Dave Chappelle is it is a bit of a shame for me, because I massively did respect him as a comic, and I suppose to an extent I still do, just talking in terms of like ability and like him being an intrinsically funny guy. But it really saddens me how much of a blind spot he has on this, and it's like it's kind of exhausting. So yeah, I appreciate the compliment, but like it kind of answers your question as well. Like Dave Chappelle is one of the stand-up comics that, like, I wouldn't say is like a main inspiration, but he definitely was one that I saw early on and was like, wow, that's someone like doing stand-up at the absolute like peak. Like they're so good. When he was younger, don't know what happened. He just became like a massive like roided up like he's got his own brand of clothing. I called him a freak essentially. It's just a whole weird mess, really.
Yeah, well, I was kind of like, when I watched him, I wasn't surprised, to be honest with you, but at the same time, I watched the special, and I was kind of like, and how little he actually understood what it meant to be gender critical or a TERF. Like
it's the buzzword, isn't it, that he's used?
Yeah. Anyway, Dave Chappelle really didn't surprise me so much, as you know, as to how little he understood about the topic he was talking about. I'm not talking about trans people. Pretty much most Joe Schmoes on the street don't understand what it means to be trans. But what he didn't understand was the gender critical side of it, so the TERF side of it, when he said, "I agree with J.K. Rowling, gender is real," and I'm like,
he said the wrong thing.
That's the wrong thing. That is not what TERF say, you know? Yeah. And to me, a comedian researches what they're making a joke about. And one of the other things I noticed, which, as I said, you didn't watch the special, was that people weren't laughing at his jokes; they were cheering at what he was saying, and it kind of, that's where I'm kind of like. And then
it's a dangerous avenue. It's a dangerous avenue to be down. It's like, it's why Steve Martin quit doing stand-up when he did, because he reached the peak of his game, and he got to the point where he was in arenas and he couldn't hear the laughs. It was just the shouting. I think if you're at that point, what are you doing? You're just playing to the choir, really, aren't you?
Yeah, it's like going to a concert. You've heard the songs, of an old band. You've heard the songs several times before, because that's what they're there for. So it's comedian is Jasper Carrott went through the same thing. In the twilight of his career. People were expecting a certain element from him. And I don't think we've heard from Jasper Carrott for 20 years now.
No, Jasper Carrott is very much the British Steve Martin.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I think everybody was expecting a certain trope from them at that point. I think, and I think Dave Chappelle has kind of fallen into that trap. Or and other comedians as well. This isn't a Dave Chappelle bashing session, but Rowan Atkinson as well. They've all fallen into this expected trope of how they are expected to be funny, and if they try and be funny in a different way, it's and they always tell us comedians have to be original, but it's hard for us to be original when people look at us and expect us to behave in a certain way. And I'm sure you have that problem as well, because you started out with with a certain aesthetic, but you're trying, but you're evolving as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know how you feel about it, but stand-up is difficult. When you first start, there's a lot of hurdles to get over. And I do think that if you are somebody who presents in a way that is different or arresting to people at first sight, it kind of, you feel like a moral obligation or a duty to kind of reference it, mention it. I feel like I'm getting to a point now where I'm a lot more comfortable with not mentioning it, but it is annoying. Yeah, it is a frustrating thing. I mean, all those comedians that you just named all have one thing in common, which is that they're all massive. They're all really successful. And I just think it's interesting that I mean, look, this is something I was thinking about today, is how many trans comedians do you see? Eddie Izzard aside, none really, other than Eddie Izzard. And Eddie Izzard is kind of it's more complex than that anyway. It's not the kind of representation that that I relate to in terms of being a younger person, I suppose. So I don't know. I just think it's ironic that we're kind of talking about these issues and the fact that we have to, there's no one else, we're not competition for these people. Do you know what I mean? These people are huge. They're the ones in power. So it's weird. Yeah, it's weird that we should even have this conversation. We even have to.
Oh yeah.
The idea that we're somehow a threat to the likes of Dave Chappelle. I mean, Dave Chappelle's doing fine. He's doing all right. Despite how much he says he's being cancelled and silenced, I don't really particularly see any evidence of that, to be honest.
No, I haven't either. I mean, one of the things one of the first videos I did when I actually came out was it wasn't exactly an attack on Ricky Gervais. It was basically a point where I did one of my stand-up routines, and it was a repeat of the stand-up routine that I did when I came out. That cis people can't tell great trans jokes, at least not on the personal level. Me, I can make, I can come up with almost anything, I have to freeze my sperm, but I can't afford to take it to, someplace, so it's going into my freezer, so I can hope I can pay the bills for the next 10 years, so I can microwave that thing later on, those kind of jokes, because it's personal to us. We get it,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with everything, isn't it? It's that thing of it's always uncomfortable when a comedian talks about something and like you said earlier, it's clear that they don't have all the information. it's akin to like if I went up there and was like doing some, you know, edgy piece about like, this is what I think of Inuits or whatever, and like I don't know anything about that culture, so like I don't know, it just seems I don't know. I think it's become this like buzz issue. Like everyone wants to have a say on it, you know. We've simultaneously never been so much talked about and yet so like misunderstood. It's kind of irritating in that way. It's like everyone's talking about us, but still we're not
part of the conversation.
We're not part of it. I don't feel part of it, you know. I do stand up fairly regularly. I haven't done much this year yet, but I do, and I'm frequently I feel like a broken record because I say this all the time, but I'm always the only trans person on the bill.
Yeah,
I have been on other bills with trans people, but it's very rare. It's very few and far in between. And it's not what I want, you know. I'd like to see more, but you know, more often than not, you know, I am following somebody who is, you know, doing some kind of transphobic material, or at least doing some kind of, like you would say, like bad trans material. And it frustrates me that there are certain comedians who are put up on pedestals for doing what society perceives as like a clever or like perceptive or sensitive piece of trans material, which is fine, but it always frustrates me because I always think, yeah, but I have a better take on it than that. You know, and I think, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I think funnier and more well thought out. So it's very frustrating. Yeah. It's the same with like panel shows and, you know, comedies on TV. It's like these people want to talk about these things, but they don't want the actual lived experience.
The actual person. So how does it feel being woke?
Yeah, weird, because, well, I mean, I'm guessing you're referring to like the conversation that's happening not just in Britain, I guess, but like America too. But like, I don't know, like that term, I feel so detached from it now, in terms of when I hear it, I just get annoyed because it's like, I mean, well, firstly, I'd say that like I am actually proud of it. Like and I don't think I am, in terms of like I feel like we could always be more. So, you know, like I'm still learning. I don't feel like I'm a complete, you know, I haven't figured it all out yet. I'm trying my best. I'm reading. I'm like trying to learn shit, but like it's not. I don't see it as an insult. I think it's interesting when I see these people like GB News say things like, oh, the woke karate, the bloody wokeists, like all these new terms have like evolved, and they completely lose track. I mean, it's just like, well, I'm proud to be somebody who, you know, hasn't made up my mind on every issue. You know, like let's listen to people and like try to understand where they're coming from. You know, I don't know, it's just it's stupid. And also, like, as you know, like the word has a different etymology. Like the roots of it are like different, you know, it comes from like black culture and stuff like that originally, and now it's just been like steamrolled, really. I mean, it's, you know, I'm just like a pretty liberal person living in the UK. I don't know, last, like, that used to be a normal thing, that used to be okay to be that. But it feels more and more now like you have to be like you have to be like an edgy piece of shit in order to get respect.
I noticed that a lot has changed since 2016, you know, with regards to attitude and edgelords and stuff like that, you know. I'd say it was pretty much the same, you know, same in America, but I mean, yeah, we've had our crazy, and we still have our crazy, you know, but at the same time, we're always kind of looking at the little country, you know, to the east of us, and saying, how can a country so small have so much baggage? And that's what it feels like for us. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've always wondered about that, the perception of the UK from outside. You know, like we're a pretty intrinsically flawed nation. You know, like we're kind of like the bad guys. You know, like our history is like gross, and has good parts to it, but it also has a lot of bad parts that we have struggled to take ownership of, and we've struggled to, talk about. And because of that, we kind of deserve that viewpoint put on us. Until like we're not grown up. We're a stupid country. Like people are gonna hate this. Like people get so defensive about this shit, but we're dumb. Like we care. We're a country that at the moment is like in complete denial about our royal family and about Prince Andrew and about all these things. It's sad. I know that you're kind of talking about the Turf Island thing, which is true. But in my opinion, with that though, as somebody who started transitioning here when I was 20, so it's like over 10 years ago now, and the country was a different place, obviously, but in a lot of ways it was the same, but it was just all more under the surface. The hatred or the kind of it was more broad. It was like the news. I mean, you lived in the UK then, right?
Oh yeah. I remember I remember trans jokes from before I even moved here. So so I know.
Well, not even jokes. I mean, it was just common parlance.
Just common parlance.
In the media, just like this is weird. And I've always, ever since I started transitioning, and even before then, I have always been aware of that point of view, like the kind of gender critical term, although there wasn't the term for it back then. But I was aware of the like Julie Burchill's and Julie Bindel and Jermaine Greer's and like the OG ones. Like I knew about it. It just wasn't a mainstream thing like it is now.
So Brexit is obviously kind of like changed the landscape as far as coming out as gender critical coming out day. I think it's coming out as gender critical or whatever it is you don't like. The people are more brazen about it. They want to go back to the days of the 80s where apparently no one was offended or whatever, and that's what it feels like to me. They want to go back to the good old days where people were. It reminds me of that British TV show. What was it? It was All Right in the 80s. And that's what they want to go back to. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the gender critical movement, for lack of a better term, is sort of intrinsically conservative. They might deny that. They might say that they have this kind of line where they kind of say like, oh no, we want true gender non-conformity. We want you to be able to dress however you want and be whoever you want to be, but
it's like I'm not racist.
But we want you to admit that you are a man, and that is all you will ever be. So it's this weird, like, paradoxical thing which doesn't take into account what effect society has and community and culture. It's you can't have one without the other. You can't have a society of what they would interpret as trans identified males walking around looking like women. Again, this is their point of view. You can't have that environment without the repercussions of that, which is people perceiving you as a woman. You can't have both. You're going to have that. So they make out that they want this true expression of non-conformity, but ultimately they're biological essentialists, and they would love things to just be the binary of man woman. I think they've invested so much of their own personality into what it means to either be a man or a woman that they find us an affront to their existence, essentially.
I mean,
and the causes that they perceive to have fought for with us, like on the other side. Apparently.
It almost it's almost like they think that we're born with a GI Joe toy or a Barbie. That's how it feels to me. Saying as a man you have certain roles, and I'm like, and who decided these roles? That's wasn't my biology or whatever like that.
And funnily enough, like they would agree with that to an extent. Like they would say that no, like that they want little boys to be able to play with Barbies and this and that, and they don't realize, I think, that like they think that we think the world is that simple, and actually like they claim to have read, like they're the kind of people that they talk about things like Judith Butler and people like that, and like gender theory, and they talk about it in these like really confident ways, like that, like they've read it. But just like you were saying earlier about this like confusion between like gender and sex and Dave Chappelle getting it wrong and stuff. The fact is, these people, they haven't read it. They've got like a cheat sheet. They have forums. They spread around ways. You know, when I get nasty comments on YouTube, which is fairly frequently, considering the fact of how many views I get is not that high, they all kind of sound like they're written by the same person, because these people are organized. This is the thing about the gender critical movement. It's organized, and that's why it's reached a certain level of success in the UK, and it has. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about it. I think about it a lot, but I feel like it is partly detrimental to my mental health sometimes, and it's a hard thing to focus on too much, I think.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we had Donald Trump, and he what his stance on the trans community is, and and he started the ball rolling with these anti-trans bills over in America. And it's against kids, but really the whole process is against all trans people. But how do you stop trans people? You go after the children first. And I noticed Britain has picked that up. They're working on trying to go after the children to slow down the immense wave of trans people now coming into coming onto the fore. They say, oh, social media is encouraging our kids to be more trans, but that's a simple way of looking at it. It's a very simplistic way of looking at it, rather than looking at how social construct works. As soon as something becomes more open to talk about, you're going to see more people coming out who they are. It's like in the 1980s. If you were gay, it was hard for you to literally come out and say, "Oh, I'm literally gay." No, it's like on EastEnders, you would have to go through this long, complicated plot line before people even guess you're gay. That's what it was 100%. Like. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
it's interesting how people. It's really weird how people don't see that simple fact of like, things are more socially acceptable, therefore it might appear that numbers are going up. And you know what, even if numbers are going up, which feels really unlikely to me, the reason for the numbers going up is either, like you said, that reason, but even if it's not, it's like you're always going to get that. Like, you're always going to get people who are like the thing that they claim to mainly be worried about is this idea of like detransition, this idea of like, oh, what if you've made a mistake, etc.
Oh yeah, the detransition argument. Yeah,
which is on one level kind of understandable. I suppose nobody wants someone to make a mistake, but the way that they completely disregard the statistics on it is quite, and look, I'm not an expert, I'm not a statistician.
That's the first thing I
don't know what everything is, but I do know with that like the amount of people that regret it is much lower than the amount of people that don't. And I think I don't know, it's such a complicated issue. I'm not a child, I don't have kids.
I mean,
but what I do know is that if I had been given the opportunity to transition as a kid, I would have jumped at it, and I would probably, I wouldn't say I'd be happier now, but I'd certainly, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? This is the thing. It's like you were saying, like they're trying to stop it at the source, and that's what I think. It's like they know that if kids transition younger, that they will have better lives, so they're trying to sort of like discourage it. That's the thing. I see sometimes I see these documentaries, and I see these kids who have transitioned from a young age, or I see like people like the musician Kim Petras, who, I don't know if you know Kim Petras, but I think she's German originally, and I think I remember she was like on morning news and stuff, because she was like the youngest person to start transition or something, and it was like this big news story at the time. And I just think it's interesting, like that I remember everyone was like, no, like you're gonna regret it, like this is a mistake, blah blah blah. And now she's like a huge pop star who like is indistinguishable from any cisgendered woman, and not only that, is like incredibly good at what she does, and just has lived this different life than what trans people like us will ever experience, which is this like almost, I mean she had like, you know, like a girlhood essentially, you know, like she had like an experience that is much more in parallel with cis women. It's just really interesting, I think. And I think if that was something that was more readily available, I think mental health issues would decrease massively among the trans community. I don't know, that's just my crazy take on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just hate kids and I want to see them all
just see them all burn in hell or whatever. I was I was born intersex, so my dimorphism was was always there, and kind of beaten and abused to be a man as as I was growing up.
I'm sorry, that's awful.
I don't know if you're familiar with the intersex movement, stop surgeries on intersex children, that kind of thing. So and I found out about a year ago I still had a functioning womb, so that explained the belly aches. But the point I'm trying to make is that they're so binary about what it's all about. When I tell them what I've been through, I'm 48 now, good grief, so when I tell them this, and tell them, oh, I'm intersex, they get around the argument saying, oh, so you're, so we call you a woman because you have a uterus. And I'm like, again, you're putting it down to, being a woman down to a body part rather than,
which is surreal, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's surreal. It's because it totally discounts your lived experience at all, and they don't know, like I'm not speaking for you, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm assuming it isn't, but you, for all they know, you might have a connection of some kind with how you were raised and how you grew up and all this kind of stuff, that like to some people, if someone said to you like, oh well, you are just this thing now because I've learned this piece of information about you, it discredits any kind of like nuance or lived experience or anything that is unique and personal to you. They can't relate to how you have grown up. You have grown up in a way that is quite unique, and I think that kind of assertion is just like so thoughtless. I think it's so bizarre. I really don't get it. I don't understand the idea of biological essentialism at all. It's like, I understand why we have categorization.
I understand the difference between male, female, and man, woman. I know the difference between those two concepts.
But I know why and I know why that we categorize things. Like you go into a museum, you categorize them. This thing's different from this thing. This helps me identify this thing. But we all understand and know, don't we, that like this thing and this thing being different doesn't mean there's nothing in between, and it doesn't mean that there are things that we don't know about, and it doesn't mean that we have a full understanding of the way that things develop in the womb and what circumstances cause whatever outcomes are. It's I don't know, it's just interesting that these people who are so sure, they're so sure of the intrinsic differences between male and female, but yet I don't know, like I don't know, I like philosophy, I like the idea that we don't I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I like the idea that we don't know everything and that we should always keep asking questions, which is antithetical to that.
Kind of brings me on to my next question. As being trans yourself, and and ourselves, have you noticed that we automatically become educators? Apparently, as soon as we become trans, we automatically are supposed to know everything about what it is to be trans. And I'm not an expert on being trans. I'll be honest with you. I'm experiencing it, but I don't know everything. Do you get that? Do you get people asking you the most complicated, mind-blowing universal questions that nobody else can answer except you?
100%. I mean, yeah. I'd say there's like a yin and a yang to that, you know, in the yeah, it's exhausting being expected to know all the things, but we kind of have to, because it's like because our identity has been called into question so frequently that you've created these mechanisms whereby you have to defend it. And it's a shame that we have to, but we do. I mean, you know, that being said, I am dumb. Like there's so much I don't know about, you know, not just with trans or gender stuff, but just in general, you know. It definitely hasn't made me smarter, but it has encouraged me to read more on the subject and try to understand concepts that I would have never otherwise understood. But it is exhausting, you know. I don't want to particularly. Like if I had my way, I would just like. Oh, sorry, I was just checking that you hadn't.
No, I'm still here. Sometimes, yeah,
you're good at that.
I've been listening intently, so.
Right. No, it's just. I mean, I think one of the positive things about it is that I think being trans, I think you can't not be introspective. And I think it's, you know, sometimes we're introspective to a fault, like it's too much. But I'm glad that I am, you know, I'm glad that I've thought about these things. And I think a lot of trans people do have a level of emotional maturity. Not all, obviously, but I think a lot do have that because they've had to think about that stuff so much. And I think you know, we have like a pretty high threshold for empathy as well. I think we're good at empathy by and large.
Yeah, which is kind of amazing, just because all the TERFs think that we are empathetical men who just. I think what was the comment you and I dealt with when I contacted you, said we are was masquerading as women or whatever or something like that. Stereotypes, that was it. And I think I said, but our entire character is built on stereotypes. It's how we have understood the world, you know. So what we learn from them and how we decide they're a stereotype and deal with that stereotype is a different thing. It's
the problem with that is with the whole like stereotype thing is that if they want to make that, again, like they kind of argue their own point against themselves, because if they want to go down that avenue, then they have to admit that the apparent stereotypes that they hold so dear to them are fragile, and that they are, you know, they can be applied in different ways. I mean, I think what this comes from, honestly, is that I think it comes from the fact that when trans women in particular start transitioning, they're fighting against the fact that they have missed out on a lot of things that they want to have done. So there is this teething period where they are then suddenly embracing everything to like a really high degree, which is totally understandable. And I went through it too, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it wouldn't even matter if you did that until you died. It's not a problem. But I do think that the reason why we do it is because of that. And also, I think that it's something that most trans people eventually get past. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I just wear and gravitate towards and do the things that are natural to me. I am not taking on stereotypes or signifiers because I am wearing a costume. That being said, I think everybody does that. I think everybody wears a costume to an extent. They are signifiers. And like, here's the thing. The reason why trans women would do that is perfectly understandable if you actually think about it, which is that if you went through male puberty and you you know, I hate these terminologies, but I'm just trying to, you know, see it from their point of view. If you quote unquote present or look more masculine and you don't want to, if you wear a pretty dress and you go into the bank, they might not think you are a cisgendered woman, but they will see the societal signifier that is, oh, this person is wearing a dress, therefore this person is presenting as female, therefore maybe I should refer to them as miss, therefore to avoid social awkwardness and not make them feel like a piece of shit. So although maybe I don't want to wear that frilly dress, maybe me wearing it just makes my day easier. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like makeup. Like, I don't want to wear makeup necessarily, but if you notice that the wearing of makeup helps you to pass better in the world and have a happier life, how can you begrudge somebody that? And also, how can you, as a self-respecting feminist, ever claim that something like makeup is a cultural like you could take cultural ownership of it from a biologically female point of view? That seems so like anti-feminist to me. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but sorry.
I mean, for me, I'm going through that stage right now. I mean, I'm catching up on 40 years of of my life taken from me, of all these of all these doubts, like, should I be into this thing? Should I be behaving this way? That kind of thing. And I'm like, reached that point. I think it was when I did one of my first interviews, and I was saying, I'm not trying to pass as a woman because I don't know what it means to be a woman right now. I've had 40 years and my experience is limited. I'm being who I am. That's all that matters. And sometimes, that I might have a stereotypical approach to that, but that's usually as a result of my understanding of what it means to be, what it means to be a woman. I've experienced cramps and periods pretty much all my life, but I had no concept that for 40 years that I was having periods for 40 years. I had no idea. So I don't know how to, how I can relate to that. When I get comments on, oh, you will never be a female, I'm like, I'm not trying to be a female. I'm just trying to be a woman. I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to be who I'm comfortable with,
Of course, yeah. And this is the irony, is like, if a cisgendered woman who's never had to think about any of these things, or who's never held their identity in question, if they decide that they want to wear a pair of pink high heels, for example, no one is criticizing them and saying, oh, well, actually, maybe a certain wave of feminists might criticize that, but no one is saying that you are necessarily dressing up or like it's generally not something that's discouraged these days. But like, it's just odd to me because it doesn't make any difference. It sounds so basic. It's not. This isn't a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but what's between your legs is or just the way that you look physically should not dictate what you are allowed to wear or express, and people see it as like, oh, you've been living this way for a long time and now you want to live this way. But the truth is, it's not that, is it? It feels very much like you have been repressing and hiding for a very long time. That's the point.
I mean, it's like I had, when I was a guy, well, I use inverted commas these days, I had no idea how to present, how to dress. I didn't know what clothes to buy for myself because none of it felt right on me. Since I started my transition, everybody's talking about how stylish I look and how all my clothes look wonderful and everything like that. So, these are things that couldn't have happened to me when I was there because I had no idea. That kind of like disconnects between my physical maleness to my to my actual gender, and trying to explain this, and I'm trying, and when people ask me about how did you know, I'm kind of going, just look at the way I dress now compared to how I dress then. You're always complimenting me on how well I dress. That's the example right there.
Sure.
The truth, that's the, I suddenly became who I was meant, who I was meant to be. And I know that sounds very philosophical, but that's the only way I can explain it to people is in a philosophical term, because I can't explain to them the science behind it. I can't explain to them what a blue pill is. I can't.
Yeah.
They don't understand that.
Well, this is the thing, is like people don't actually really know, even now, that no one's got the final word on it, and it's like I think you have to be philosophical, because at the end of the day, you've been living your entire life in your head, well, that's how I was anyway. So basically, I think I created this kind of like dual personality, in the sense that it was kind of like, no, here's the character that I'm playing, and then one day this other person will come into the fore, and as a result of that, you do a lot of mental work up to then, to not only to gear yourself up to it, but also to sort of get yourself used to the idea of that person. But yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, it is a philosophical thing, but I can only ever come back to the thing of like, it annoys me that we have to have this conversation, because it all feels so like,
yes,
it all feels so like 80s. Not that I was alive then, but like Judith Butler was writing about this stuff in the 80s. In my opinion, she had it pretty figured out. Sorry, they had it. See, even I'm messing up. They had it pretty figured out even back then. Like, this whole thing about gender is so exhausting, because it's just like, Judith Butler basically talked about how everyone has their own kind of intrinsic idea of what their gender is, and there's a possibility and a scope for an infinite amount of genders. And then people took that and kind of twisted it to kind of insinuate that, like, oh no, that means like, the fabric of reality is being shifted apart, and like there's no such thing. But I mean, I don't want to speak for Judith Butler, but I think what they were saying was like, because there are so many possibilities and so many different types of ways to be a person, and so many intersectional ways to exist, that maybe we should just call the whole thing off in a utopian society and have none, but that's never going to happen, is it? So,
no, it's
just got to be true to yourself.
We're just so comfortable in the status quo. We don't, we see ourselves complaining about the status quo, but we have no idea how comfortable we are in it. And I think that's probably the reality, that we deal with. People are probably more conservative than they, like you said earlier on in the interview, people are more conservative than they're willing to accept.
Well, the world isn't, the world isn't built for gender variance. Like, it's a world that is still extremely binary. Like, everything we do or everything we see, like, less so now, it's getting slightly better, but it's still nothing, in comparison to the status quo, like you would say. Advertising, toilets, clothes, everything, it's all so binary. A lot of
again,
there's almost this vision of like what it means. Oh, sorry, did you cut out then?
Yeah, you said everything is so binary, and then things went dead again.
Everything's so binary, like it's almost like, and again, I don't want to speak for all cis people, like it's not what I intend, but the world is made for them, and so much of their identity is based on the binary nature of existence.
Reminds me of an independent small film I saw on Channel 4 back in the 80s. It was about it was a commentary on accessibility in the, in the able-bodied world, and this disabled director created a world where only disabled people could live, and able-bodied people were couldn't exist properly in this world, to the point that they were sawing their legs off just to walk through the hallways. And that was a really good really good commentary. So
I haven't seen that film, but I saw recently like a description of it, and a drawing that was related to it or something, and it's an animated thing, isn't it? Animated.
I think this was a live action one, but I know where you're coming from. But it was an interesting analogy. Like you said, the world is created for cis people, unless you live in Vegas and it's just crazy, But
unfortunately, though, it's like that is a great example, because it's something that I personally had my own sort of like revelation with, which is like, so I've never been ignorant to disability, disabled people, but it wasn't until my mum got ill and became a wheelchair user that I like fully appreciated how much of the UK is not designed for people with disabilities. And then after that, I went into learning disabilities care, and I worked as a support worker for learning disabilities, adults with learning disabilities. And I did that for 5 years. And that was like entering a secret world that I'd never even conceived of before. Obviously, I knew people with learning disabilities existed, but I didn't fully appreciate the kind of fight that they had against, just for respect, and just to be treated as like adults and stuff like that. And it's like, it's crazy. I feel like sometimes you have to, sometimes it's that thing, isn't it? It's like when you have like a family member who is kind of like slagging off gays and whatever, and then their son comes out, and then they're like their number one supporter, and then they suddenly they've suddenly changed their tune. And you can deride that and you can critique that, but unfortunately sometimes you do have to experience something firsthand in order to
change,
and empathize with something.
So we've gotten very serious in this. Let's get back to your funny bits. Okay.
Still think I'm funnier than Dave Chappelle?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more funny than misery, I think.
I've been trying to disprove that for the last hour.
So one of the things I really love about your sketches is, it's kind of how you are very much the anti-edgelord to the edgelords. I noticed a lot of what you do is basically your attack helicopter sketch. I thought was one of the funniest thing I ever saw.
Oh, thank you.
I especially and it's true in a way. It's kind of like these edgelords are really pushing their point to the point where somebody says, "You've made your point," and you were in that sketch going, "Has he though?" And I'm kind of like,
I mean, that comes from a place of like, it really frustrates me when people make this claim about trans people that we are sensitive, or that we are weak or weak-willed or something. And it's like, because from my point of view, trans people are some of the strongest people I've ever met.
Oh yeah.
We do something. We make a decision to change our lives in a way that is so profound and like is so dangerous in a way to what society deems as normal, that I think we deserve respect for it. I honestly do. I think that it's something that a lot of, for lack of a better term, normal cis people, I think it's something that they can't relate to because they couldn't conceive of doing it themselves. And it's like, okay, good for you, but don't call me a snowflake when you have no idea what it's like to actually take on that physical and emotional burden of thinking that your whole life is going to come crashing down, your family are going to disown you, you're never going to get a job, you're never going to find love, like all these things that come with that. Just the physical difficulty of transition and what it represents in the binary world. it's like don't say that we're sensitive. Like, you're sensitive. You're the one who's like settled into your nice, comfortable, normal life with your wife and kids and a mortgage. You know, we're like, living on the outskirts still. Like, we're living dangerously in a lot of ways. It's like
it's like we go through this period where we can't go out for a long time because A, for our own mental health, and B, because we don't know what the physical danger is going out when you're going through the first stages of transitioning. They have this. When I started out, I saw this list and saying there's going to be this. You have to stay in for a while until you're confident enough to face what's going to be waiting for you outside, because it's going to be a harsh world. And to say that makes to say knowing we're going to face that makes us cowardly or makes us weak or makes us snowflakes, it's kind of like a kick in the teeth.
Yeah, like I was like, when you first, well, here's the thing, I don't want to make it seem like I'm out of those woods. Like some people, I've had people say to me like, oh, but you pass relatively well, or like
yeah, I get
kind
that
of like
too.
Passing privilege thing. But I think the thing is like, and there are certain people that would disagree with that. For me, like I've seen the YouTube comments, whatever, I don't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, I get that too. It's going. I get that too. I mean, I get honked and car, and whistled when I'm out on the street. So I mean, obviously the stockings help, I guess. But as soon as they come up close, if you get up closer to me, you'll know. If you're kind of like 6 feet away, it's a little bit more difficult. But when you come up close to me, like you can see me in this camera, it's pretty much more obvious, So,
I mean, I think even the concept of passing is like a gross concept.
I do. I find that very, and also very elitist. I think, if that makes any sense.
No, it is. It is. But I suppose it's elitist in the same way that, like, or in a similar way that, like, pretty people have, like, is that kind of thing. But
I think I described it as the male ideal of what beauty is, and that's what I put down to people who say, "Oh, you don't pass," and I'm like, when they're insulting me or when they're insulting my friends, and that's because of your idea of what beauty is.
But I also don't think that we should get, I don't know, like, as a community, I don't think we should get too hung up on that, and like, I don't think we should like put people down. I mean, this sounds so like backwards, I suppose, but I don't think we should put people down for what we perceive as their passing privilege, because the thing is like, passing itself comes with a whole new array of like terrible this sounds so like this sounds very much like white people have problems too, but I guess what I'm trying to explain is that if it comes with its own dangers, I suppose. It comes with its own. Because there's this whole thing of, the male. If a man is attracted to you and he perceives you as one thing, and then he feels that he's been slighted in a way, or he's been lied to, that's a tale as old as time for the trans community. Do you know what I mean?
We have
that's how we die. That's how it happened.
I think we have the trans defense in America.
The panic laws.
Panic, So
it's, I guess what I've badly there is just that, like, we're all in it together, kind of, and we have to like stick together and stop fighting each other so much, maybe.
I agree. So I mean, a lot of you. One thing I noticed that you do a fair bit. You've done a little bit of work for the Channel 4, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is from me outside looking in. I've never worked for Channel 4. I've done a few things for the BBC, which I regret. But anyway, have you found that Channel? I'm trying to explain to people why I prefer Channel 4 to the BBC, but the BBC is such a powerful institution now, over in America. How have you found working for Channel 4? Are they actually still as progressive as they presented 20 years ago, or have they become more conservative themselves?
I guess what I would say first is that I wouldn't say that I worked for Channel 4, because the way that it works is that, like, you have because all of these channels, BBC, Channel 4, whatever, they all they don't make so many things in-house. Like they have production companies who make things and pitch things and stuff. So really, I felt like I was working for this one specific production company who are very lovely and incredibly progressive and want to work with me.
Yeah.
And then Channel 4 bought a thing off them. So I didn't really ever interact with Channel 4 so much.
No.
But what I would say is that it is incredibly conflicting to be somebody who wants to, and I'm not ashamed to say it, like I'll say it, like I want to make programs for the BBC. I want to make programs for Channel 4. I write and I pitch, and I have been doing that for the past couple of years. And look, the BBC is an organization that has created some of the best comedy Britain has ever produced.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I also can't look past the fact that their record of trans representation has been abysmal, and that whatever they're doing right now is really uncomfortable and fucking weird. But I also can't lie and say that I don't want to be involved, because it's that kind of thing. It's like I don't think that it's necessarily a positive thing to kind of cut off your nose to spite your face in a way. Yeah. I think what I want is I want to see the BBC change, and I want to see the BBC put its money where its mouth is and actually be an inclusive organization that actually at least pretends to care about trans people. Because at the moment, like, I'm not afraid to say their record is abysmal. I saw like some pictures and clips from the BBC protest yesterday, and like I fully support that. I think you have to hold these institutions to account. At the same time, I think if we don't get some trans people in the BBC, and if we don't get some people on the inside, it's doomed. Because the BBC is a hard thing to talk about, because it's a bit like the NHS in a lot of ways. It's like you can criticize the NHS and also still love the NHS.
Yeah, you
can have that. You just because something's free or you love it doesn't mean that it's beyond criticism. The NHS makes mistakes. The NHS gets things wrong, and so does the BBC. And I guess I used to love the BBC. I still have that in my heart. I want to see it get better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
but sorry, just to answer your initial question, Channel 4 does seem to be. Channel 4's always been the edgier one. Channel 4's always been perceived as the one that's more willing to take risks and stuff.
Oh, I noticed its Brexit debate. It was, I think Boris Johnson hated Channel 4 back then.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah,
and it certainly does in some ways. It definitely has. Channel 4 has certainly pushed for a lot more disability representation and a lot more minority representation, like Black and Asian representation. I do still think they could always do more for those particular groups, and I think they could also do a hell of a lot more for trans people as well. And I'm not just saying that as somebody who desperately wants to make things for them. I am saying it honestly, like they need to do more. Because not only would I like to be involved in the creative process, I'd also like to actually see some stuff that at least represents me in an honest, interesting way, and not a shit stereotypical way.
Yeah, I mean, something that says, I mean, to me, it's like when I write trans characters, and because I write science fiction and
cool.
and stuff like that. When I write,
who do you like? Who would you recommend? Author-wise?
Author-wise, oh my goodness, I'm such a classic. I'm such a classics. I'm a H.G. Wells fan myself. Arthur C. Clarke, Dune, that kind of thing. I haven't read anything modern. You know, the only reason I know who J.K. Rowling is because I read it to my kid.
Oh, right. Do you like Kurt Vonnegut?
Pardon?
Do you like Kurt Vonnegut?
I've never heard of him, so I'm going to have to.
Oh my God.
I'm so out of it.
You should. Well, I mean, Kurt Vonnegut's old. Kurt Vonnegut's the 70s, but
yeah. I mean,
amazing.
Yeah.
Not so much. I mean, sci-fi elements, but just.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like films like Solaris and not the American remake, the Russian film. You know,
I've seen both.
Yeah, I like.
I think it's all right. The remake, it's not so.
Yeah, I like 2001, 2010. You know, that kind of it's those kind of cerebral things. The original Planet of the Apes. You know. That kind of thing. So I'm way too classic for that. And I also got to admit, I'm still a fan of Doctor Who. You know, I was brought up on Doctor Who, so it's something that is there in my psyche. But anyway, back to my original point. When I kind of bring up a trans character, I don't hide the fact that they're trans, but at the same time, I don't bring it up script-wise as well, because unless it's impactful on the story, it should be about the the character. And so many of the people I talk to want me to write their background about what it was before they became trans, and I'm like, why? That is not integral to the character development in the story itself. But so many people have this kind of voyeuristic interest in the trans experience in media.
That's the problem. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. That's something that's really unfortunate, because it's can you imagine if, like, when you met somebody, you asked them about their past and where they're from and like all that kind of stuff before you could even like move forward into like who they are now, and like we all change, you know, we all change in so many different ways. When I meet somebody, you know, you're meeting me, a person, someone who has life experiences and something to say. Like, I'm here in front of you now. It is frustrating to be reduced down to like a timeline, like, oh, I want to see what you used to look like, oh, what was your old name, like all that kind of stuff. It's like, I know I'm not saying anything new here, but I guess I'm just venting. It is frustrating to hear that stuff, because you spend so long living your life that even that question itself insinuates that you are being deceptive or playing a character, and you're not. You know, you're literally existing every day and learning every day, and I'm it's like, okay, I started transitioning over 10 years ago, but I'm a different person today than I was yesterday, and I'm a different person now than I was 5 years ago, and I see that as just as a significant change as the week that I started transitioning. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm happy to talk about my childhood, but like ordinary people, talk about their childhoods. You know, I don't want it to be a part of my resume when I'm, you know, when I'm going out dating you, or when I meet you for the first time, or whatever like that. You know, it's
like there are things that. Sorry, Justin, what was you going to say?
No, it's just, I'm not asking my date about her childhood unless it's part of the conversation. You know?
Yeah. Like, there are things about me that have informed the person I am more significantly than transition has. It's like, maybe I should release like a timeline video of, you know, how grief has affected me in my life, you know, how the deaths of people that I care about has affected me. That would just be just as significant to me as, wow, look at how much my bone structure or my muscles have changed over the years. It's like, who gives a fuck, you know?
Yeah. So we'll start winding up in a minute, but I just want to know what influences you. I mean, so far a lot of your comedy has been on the transness, but is there any chance you want to move away from that eventually? You want to kind of move into new material. So
yeah. I mean, so like in terms of stand-up, I do still talk about being trans because, as I said, it is my life. It's the thing that informs my life.
I love the empathy joke. That was
thank you. Yeah, but it informs my life in the sense that like I can relate to lots of different people, but I guess I do feel a sense of duty sometimes to continue to talk about it. And it is true that sometimes I don't want to. And there are times when I don't. And I have done whole 20-minute sets without mentioning it and stuff like that. Like it's something that is possible. But I do feel like there's still a lot to say. And I also feel like there's a lot of cleaning up to be done in a way of bad takes, and misconceptions, and it's not my job to carry that on my shoulders. So yeah, I do, for every thing that I've written that has some kind of trans character in it, I have like 3 things that I've written that don't. I've recently started talking about what it's like to date as a trans, and it's amazing how many intersections that has with cis people. It's not, it's some of the experiences are quite universal. My influences and stuff, I mean, this is the thing, is like all my comedy influences, they're not trans comedians. There are none. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm influenced by who everybody else is influenced by. Like when I was growing up, my big thing was like surrealist stuff. Like I loved Vic and Bob. I loved Harry Hill. I loved stuff like that was like a little bit more avant-garde and stuff, even though it's not technically what I do. That's what I loved. And that's what I still enjoyed watching, and I would love to do stuff more like that. And I just want to have fun and be silly. Do you know what I mean? I honestly do feel like the trans debate is like a burden. It's something that it's like just when I'm out, I get pulled back in. It's like it's such a time now where like everyone, it's such an issue. Like we're at a point where like I wake up and I dread to look at Twitter because I know there's going to be some other news story about it, and I'm going to have to tweet something about it. And it's like, I guess I'm just getting comfortable with the idea now of like, do I have to? There's enough people doing that. I don't really have to.
Yeah, it's like I said yesterday in my J.K. Rowling video. I said, this is why I don't talk about J.K. Rowling. People are doing it better than I can. And to be frank, if I have to be honest with you, I had issue with her long before the trans problem came out. And I was pretty, I explained to them that history. But ironically, if I had to come out and said she's very anti-Semitic, which is I don't think she's anti-Semitic by choice. I think that's more of a cultural thing. But my problem was with her werewolf AIDS analogy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, and if I'd have come out 10 years ago and said, this is problematic, I can tell you that those trans fans of Harry Potter would have ripped me a new one back then, but now she's come out as trans. It's okay for me to say it, apparently. So that's why I don't discuss J.K. Rowling. She's a transphobe. What makes her any different from any other transphobe in the world other than she's got lots of money?
I think that's the thing. I think that is the thing, though. I think that's the thing that sticks in people's craw about it, is that, she's peddling that line of like, woe is me. I'm being cancelled and silenced. And, in the meantime, she lives in like a literal castle. It's kind of like absurd, really.
How could she be cancelled? She only tweets twice a month. Nobody's cancelling her. Nobody's silencing her. If she wants to say what she's going to say, she can say it. That's what gets me.
She's doing that doubling down thing because she's fucked up. Like she may not feel like she has. Maybe she. I don't know if she maybe realized how big of a sort of queer fan base that she has, for some reason that I will never understand. I mean, I've never been a Harry Potter fan. It's not my thing. I did read
I couldn't get into it. Yeah.
It was a little bit too past my time, I think, but I just honestly, I know this makes me sound like a contrarian, is why I don't really say it that often, but I just don't get what the fuss is about with it. I've never ever perceived Harry Potter as being particularly original. I get why people like it, but I don't get why people like it as much as they do.
Yeah, I was never a fan. You know, it's kind of when it came up, it's kind of J.K. Rowling is trans. Kind of, why do you talk about it? You're trans. Because I wasn't a fan of J.K. Rowling to begin with. You know, her coming out as a transphobe doesn't affect me as much as it does some of the people who have worshipped her for the last 20 years.
Yeah. I do empathize with that. I think it's hard. I think it is difficult when if you love something and then that person lets you down, it is difficult. What I would say to those young people is that it gets less difficult over time. Like, I don't watch Woody Allen films anymore, and I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't miss them particularly.
Yeah.
I don't really care anymore. It's kind of like, I feel like I was kind of under a spell a little bit with that. Yeah. I think people will they'll find new stuff to like, you know, they'll find non-problematic stuff to enjoy.
I'm really happy with this conversation. We actually got through a transgendered conversation without discussing what we went through when we transitioned. That's actually nice.
Oh, good. That's nice. Yeah.
So is there anything you want to say to cis or transgender people out there right now before we conclude? You know, so final words. Is there anything you want to say to an aspiring comedian, maybe? You know,
that's okay. Well, yeah. What I would say is I think that one of the problems with the stand-up circuit in England particularly, but I don't know what it's like in America. America's too big. But with England, or at least with London, I suppose my little area, is that there just aren't enough people doing it. And here's the thing: stand-up takes, as you all know, it takes a certain constitution. You have to have an element of not giving a fuck. But it will only improve if you get involved. And it does sadden me that more trans people don't get involved. And I think stand-up is a great thing because it's not going to fix your problems. And I'm not saying that stand-up is something that is good for your mental health necessarily. I think it takes a certain person to do stand-up. But what I would say is that stand-up was helpful for me early on because I was writing a lot of stuff and I didn't know where to send it to. I didn't know what to do. I was living on my own. I was really depressed.
Oh, hold on. Fuck.
But on something that was not related to me being trans, it was just, we're all here trying to make people laugh.
So could you start that again? I'm sorry, you said you were very depressed and I lost connection.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, stand-up gave me at a time when I was like very depressed and living on my own and very isolated, stand-up gave me like a sense of community, and it helped me to bond with people that weren't the same as me, and we all bonded on this one thing that was, we're all just trying to make people laugh and all just trying to, you know, get good at this thing. I just think the great thing about stand-up is it gives you a voice. You know, you can go up in front of people and you can say what you wanted to say, and people will tell you that there's no free speech anymore and that you can't say anything. It's not true. I've never felt that. I've always said what I want to say. I think the difference is just the things that I have to say, they're not racist. So anyway, do it. Just try it. You'll either love it or you'll hate it. And if you love it, you'll keep doing it.
Yeah, there's nothing more rewarding for a comedian than when you actually see how much your audience is enjoying what it is you're saying, because they're not just laughing because they find it funny. If your joke has a point, they're laughing because they see what you're trying to tell them as well. Laughter is such an interesting thing to understand, and to be honest with you, I find laughter more encouraging than a cheer, you know.
Yes, also I think that I think one thing that the trans movement, or however you want to call it, I think one thing that it lacks is a good sense of humor.
Oh yes.
Now look, that could be subjective. Maybe I mean, I don't necessarily. That's not an indictment of.
No. I made that. Yeah, I made that. I made that clear in my first video. You know, this can be funny because when you think about it, my being trans is somewhat, after 40 years, is kind of a bit of a joke. When I didn't have to wait 40 years, you know.
But I didn't mean that. What I mean is I mean that what I mean is that the only way that we're going to be able to fight back against these people that want to essentially see us disappear is through the unashamed, unapologetic living of our lives. And you know what, like, humor is such a big part of that. You know, you've got to laugh these people off because they are absolutely out of their element. So yeah, like I guess I do believe in the power of humor.
Power of laughter.
Power of the laugh is the best medicine, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
But it can be, you know, it can be weaponized.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Make fun of these people, you know, but do it in a clever way and do it in a biting way.
Make sure, you know, it's not so much make sure that it hurts, but make sure that it stinks just a little. Because it's like I was told when I was stung by a bee, you know, I was angry at the bee, and you know, it's kind of like, and my mother was like, "Will you go near the beehive again?" No. Well, then the bee's made its point, then, hasn't it? You know.
But the bee's dead, though.
The bee's dead, though. You know, that's true.
That's the only problem.
Probably the wrong analogy now. You know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I mean, one of the more enlightening conversations I've had in a long time, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's nice.
It's so hard to find somebody who kind of understands what it is we're both going through, you know. So
yeah, of course, we're all going through it. You know, that's the thing. It's a shared experience.
Yeah.
You know.
So.
Thanks for having me. It was really nice.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic, and I hope we get to do this again.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Cool. Thank you.